Good morning. Welcome back to another edition of the pre-market PulseScan with yours truly. That's the Algo Capitalist, aka the Vulcan, coming to you live from PulseWaveTrading.com, home of the world famous PulseWave price trigger reports that we put in your hand each and every trading day. I'm back. Had to take a day off, but I'm back now. I tell you, never ceases to amaze me that whenever I step away, whenever the cat is away, the mice will play. And it's always interesting things coming out, nonstop news. In case you've been hiding under a rock, you don't know and haven't heard that they're scared to death. They are shook that a second wave of the pandemic is hitting us or about to hit us here in the United States. And I must say that it does appear that that is the plan, that that's what they want to do. And, you just can't put things past anybody. Based on the things I've been hearing and what I've been seeing, it would appear that a second wave is planned, and this one is supposed to do what you call it. This is supposed to be like worse than the previous one. So the latter being stronger than the first is what everybody is afraid of, and rightfully so. Rightfully so. It is estimated that if a second wave does hit, that it would pretty much guarantee a full-blown global economic collapse, like full-blown, no questions asked, just terrible. Now, if you look at just all the information that has come out, it's kind of mixed. There's much debate about, numbers being massaged, things of that. So, we have to get into it. We're going to talk about some of those things. But first things first, let's look at these pre-markets, see what's going on, see what's popping. We'll compare it to what we talked about last night and the end of day report. All right, so right now you got the Dow futures up 65 points at 25,754. You got the NASDAQ 100 off a quarter of a point only at 10,147. Even the S&P 500 is up 6 1/4 points at 3096.5, trading below that 3100 psychological line. The Russell Mile Hustle's up 2.5, trading at 1440.10. The Bitcoin Futures Composite Index is up $30 at 92.15. And we got the Nat Gas down 7 cents at 167. Crude oil is up 55 cents at $39.82 a barrel. Long bond is down a whopping 24.30 seconds, trading at 177.27. That's 177 and 27.30 seconds. Gold futures are down $14, trading at $17.8640 an ounce. All right, after topping at $18.0770 in the overnight market. Silver down 10 cents at $18.53 an ounce after topping out at a whopping $18.85 per ounce. And that is on the September contract, which is now the new front month for silver. US dollar index is off 2 pips at 97.36. The euro dollar is off 14 pips at 112.38. Pound sterling up 27 pips at 124.24. The Aussie is up right now 14 pips at 69.14. Canadian dollar is off 4 pips at 135.69. Euro yen is off 69 pips at 120.57. Dollar yen off 50 pips at 107.44. And the New Zealand dollar, the Kiwi, right now is up 11 pips at 64.68. Beans up again, 6.25 points at 888 half. And this is, oh, we're trading November beans now. This is Novi beans. Wow, that's what it looks like. Yeah, this is Novi. Okay. Corn is up 6.75 points at 357.25. And we got wheat up 4.75 points at 496 half, trying to get back up above 5. So interesting what's happening here in these markets. All right, here's the market news. Wirecard is set to miss the very first payment on a $561 million worth of debt and join the notorious no coupon club. The fintech group is due to make an interest payment of 0.5% on the bond in September. This is what a I can't say it right. Kleptocracy looks like. Billionaire investor Chamath Palihapitiya blasted the Fed for buying foreign company bonds. The Fed has bought debt issued by more than 85 companies as of June the 16th. Now, see, this right here is what I'm talking about. Now, it didn't buy shares of stock. Oh, no. It pulled a gangster move by buying the debt of companies. What happens when you buy the debt of companies? When the company becomes the debtor to you, you're playing the bank. Well, you pretty much own the company in a default. Yeah, that's a really slippery slope, ladies and gentlemen, but that's the one you guys have been clamoring that they go down. You've been asking the government to save you when that is not the government's job. So we have ballooned the government with our constant whining and bickering about things, messes that we make. And this is what happens. Apple's developer war reignites after a yoga app says it was rejected from the App Store for refusing to auto-bill users. Following the backlash, Apple said it would allow app developers to challenge its decisions. Tesla paid Elon Musk almost $1 million to ensure its board against lawsuits, just as shareholders are being urged to oust him over his $56 billion bonus. Musk only qualifies for the full $55.8 billion bonus if Tesla hits certain financial milestones over a decade. Well, if it's in the man's contract and you got to pay the man, then pay the man. What you getting mad for? Y'all getting rich too. If y'all invested in the company, doesn't make any sense. But that's what greed does. JP Morgan breaks down how COVID-19 nearly destroyed one of the market's safest trades and lays out 3 lessons to help investors tackle future crises. Strategists explain how the Fed intervened to prevent a wider liquidity crisis. Goldman Sachs has formulated a strategy that could triple the market's return within a year as volatility remains higher than normal, including 11 new stock picks for the months ahead. The implication is that returns adjusted for the risk and volatility investors tolerate will be lower. So you say. Remember, Goldman Sachs, all these big wirehouses are known for ripping people's face off. They create financial instruments that blow up in your face like clockwork, and you never make money on their stock picks because picking stocks means nothing. It's based on long-term investing. If you're only 20, buy this stock and don't think about it again until you're 65. By that time, the company could have gone bankrupt or anything. in between, or still be at the same price it was 60 years from now as it was trading today. That is not investing. That is worse than going to Las Vegas. You would have better odds at the blackjack table. Bank of America lists 8 retail stocks to buy as they rake in revenues from an unprecedented surge in home improvement spending. Americans are likely to keep spending on DIY home projects and new home furnishings, the bank said. DIY is do it yourself. European and U.S. stocks are down. In Europe, Germany's DAX fell 1.4%, Britain's FTSE 100 fell 1.1%, and the Euro stocks 50 also fell 1.3%. In Asia, China's Shanghai Composite rose 1.4%, Hong Kong's Hang Seng rose 0.5%, and Japan's Nikkei fell 0.7% at the close. In the U.S., futures underlying the Dow Jones Industrial Average, the S&P, the NASDAQ, fell between 0.4 and 0.8%. Earnings are expected. Macy's, Constellation Brands, and General Mills are the highlights. And economic docket today is the MBA mortgage applications and IHH market purchasing managers indexes are scheduled for release. All right, so there you go with that. I know it's a mouthful, but it's a lot of things going on, but then again, a lot of nothing going on at the same time. All right, let's see here where we are. All right, so there's some things that you guys need to know about, and I think we need to get down to business. What do you say? All right, so a couple things I want to talk about today. First, let's talk about how there's a mad rush going on right now to get out of the major cities. So many wealthy people are rushing to move away from the big cities that it is creating a bit of a real estate boom in many suburban areas, small towns, and rural communities. Fear of COVID-19, a collapsing economy, and the tremendous urban violence that we have witnessed in recent weeks have combined to create a frenzy of activity. Last week, and even weeks prior to that, I remember people in the business saying that they have sold more properties than they ever sold in their life. In their life, during a depression, you guys. Come on, that's some stuff right there. That's saying a lot. That is saying a lot. There's a mad rush to get out of the city. And I don't know what the end ramifications of this is really going to look like. But mostly in this environment, it's just wealthy folks that are able to move away from places like San Francisco and purchase new homes elsewhere. Relocation at the moment is only by wealthy individuals who still have the financial mobility to move as the real economy implodes and paralyzes the bottom 90% of Americans. So really it's only the top 10% that are able to, move and do things a little bit differently. Even with a good credit score, lenders are not pre-approving folks like they once did. Many people over the years flooded into places like San Francisco as the economy was booming. And of course, the tech space was always flourishing. But now with an economic downturn and social unrest and pandemics being planned out, the city is becoming too dangerous to raise a family. Over on the East Coast, all right, violence is one of the primary motivating factors that is causing people to suddenly pick up and move. Virtually everyone has seen all the stunning footage of all the rioting and looting that took place in the heart of New York City. And it certainly wouldn't take much to spark more episodes of widespread violence. To quote from a new show I've been watching on Prime, The scene where a dude came through the door, the lady opened the door for him. She was like, "You smell of violence." So that's what we're saying right now. Violence is in the air. At the same time, overall crime rates in New York City have been absolutely skyrocketing. And this is helping to fuel an exodus to rural communities in New York and New Jersey. During May, overall crime declined compared to the same period last year. But the New York City Police Department said murders in the city increased by 79%. Murder increased by 79%. Murder has gone up 79%. Shootings jumped by 64%. And burglaries rose 34%. The surge in violent crime is expected to supercharge a trend of New Yorkers fleeing the metro for rural communities in New York and New Jersey. Let's deal with the murder rate jumping 79%. How do you get the murder rate jumping 79%? I thought the rioting was based on police brutality upon the community. But the community is not concerned with the police brutality because they have escalated murdering to 79% increase. So it's okay if people murder each other. It's just not good if the police do it. Hey, what up, Will? Up in the live chat, man. Long time no see, man. Hope all is well with you and the fam. Crazy. I can't get off of this. Murder has increased by 79%. Who is doing all the murdering and why has it escalated? I thought brown people were coming together to protest police brutality. Instead, they've turned their focus to destroying each other. It's like I said. Black lives do not matter to black people. Not when they are gunning each other down in the street. Not when they are murdering their unborn children in the womb. Brown people are leading in the crime statistics for murder in New York City. According to the NYPD, murder has jumped 79%. How do you explain yourself? Antifa? Black Lives Matter? How do you explain this? Why are brown people the number one murderers in the country? Why are brown people the number one murderers in the country? They murder each other in the street and they murder their unborn children in the womb. Why are brown people so murderous? Why do they smell and reek of violence? Do not blame TV, movies, or video games. You don't get to run away from this one. The video game did not make you gun that man down in the street. By the way, that's the opening bell for those of you that need to handle some business. We need to deal with this, ladies and gentlemen. This is a problem. This is a problem. You can't blame the government for you shooting your neighbor. The New York Police Department has nothing to do with you shooting your neighbor. You cannot blame anyone for your finger pulling the trigger on another human being and taking their life. Do you know why murder is so horrendous and heinous? What do you call a murderer who is murdered more than once? We call that person a serial killer. Why are brown people so murderous towards each other and towards their young? You cannot blame anyone but yourself. No one told you to shoot that dude. No one told you to cut that dude. No one told you to hurt that man. You chose to do that. Don't say, well, the police department made me do it. How did they make you do it? Did they put the gun in your hand? Did they have a gun at your head and say, if you don't pull the trigger, we're going to pull the trigger for you? Did they do that? No. Did the video game put the gun in your hand and say, if you don't pull the trigger right now, so help me, I'm going to jump out of this computer screen. I'm going to jump out of this Xbox. I'm going to shoot you myself? Is that what happened? No. Did the violent movie, the rated R movie do it? The Chuck Norris movie make you do it? Did Chuck Norris put a gun in your hand? Did Dirty Harry put a gun in your hand? Did Charles Bronson have a gun to your temple and say, if you don't shoot that man, I'm gonna shoot you? Is that what you're trying to say? So now you're blaming everyone else but yourself. You're not so then basically every murderer should be let out of prison because it's not their fault that they committed a murder. It's TV's fault, it's the movie's fault, it's the video game's fault. Well, then explain to me while millions of other people have played the violent video game, watched the violent movie, and they have not committed murder over and over again. Explain that. You cannot. See, they don't want to talk about that. You don't hear Black Lives Matter talking about that. And you don't want to know why? Because Black Lives Matter is a fake organization. It is not a black people organization. It is an LGBTQ organization. They are riding the Black Lives Matter banner so they can push forward and further their political agenda. When are people going to wake up and see what is happening right before their eyes? Again, take responsibility. No one is causing you to murder. And don't say it's because you're economically disadvantaged. There are millions of people who are economically disadvantaged who do not murder and gun down their brother in the street. There are millions of poor people who do not murder their children in the womb. Stop blaming everyone else for your failures. You have been doing this for too long. Brown people have been doing this to each other for centuries, and it has never stopped. That's how you got enslaved in the first place, because you were warring with each other when you should have been coming together. And then what did you do? You started selling your brother to the Atlantic slave trade. You have been doing violence to your brother for way too long. When is it going to stop? When are brown people going to stop killing each other? I don't want to hear it. Do not blame the CIA for bringing drugs into the ghetto. We already know what happened. Yes, we know they did that, but no one forced you to take that drug. You took that drug. You made that decision to take that drug. Just like you made the decision to take the quote unquote white man's liquor and cloth and guns in exchange for selling your brother into slavery. This has been a revolving circle that is not stopped. It is going on and on and on. This is at the heart of the problem. All right? Deal with it. No one can help you, Mr. and Mrs. Community in the brown community. No one can help you do that. You have to make that decision for yourself. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it. Stop it. The time for the excuses is over. You can't blame slavery because you were not a slave and neither were your parents. So cut it out. Don't blame slavery for that. Well, you know, Jim Crow, you weren't even alive during Jim Crow. Stop it. Stop it. Cut it out. Take responsibility for your actions, ladies and gentlemen. This is where we are. Take responsibility, personal responsibility. You're making it too easy for the New World Order to come in and take over and throw all of you in internment camps. You're handing it to them on a silver platter. When this happens, it's going to be your fault because you took the bait. They lined y'all up perfectly. I thought you guys had more street smarts than that. You let them come in here and line you up with a fake Floyd incident. And now here you are burning down cities and killing your own people. You are making it look so easy for those that hate you to destroy you because you're destroying yourself. All they had to do is give you a little bit of fuel and then you go destroying yourself again. The Black community has been destroyed inwardly and outwardly. It's been decimated. That's why you will never see a civil rights situation like you saw in the 60s. You will never see that happen again. The powers that be made sure of it. They gave you the movement that they wanted you to have with this Black Lives Matter. It's not even about Black lives. Man, they lined y'all up beautifully. They lined you up. This has nothing to do with Black lives. It's about them pushing their political agenda. It's about social Marxism. And you guys are taking it. You are lined up perfectly. How ignorant do you have to be? Even in the middle of the United States, the city of Chicago is experiencing even more violence than New York City. In fact, dozens of people were just shot over the Father's Day weekend. 9 people have been killed, including 4 under the age of 18, and 47 more were injured in shooting across Chicago on Father's Day weekend, police said. 2 teenage boys, a 3-year-old and a 13-year-old girl are among those who were killed, officials told ABC 7 in Chicago. A 3-year-old. You gunned down a 3-year-old? Really? Really? Good grief. This is craziness. And it happened on Father's Day of all days. Father's Day, ladies and gentlemen. Father's Day. The young people are lost. The young people are lost, ladies and gentlemen. They're lost. Do you know why murder is so horrible? Murder is so horrible is because when you murder someone in cold blood, you seal their fate for all eternity. They could have had a chance to repent of their sins and turn to the Most High. But you took that away from them when you murdered them. Now their fate is sealed. Do you see the heinousness of murder and why it is so ridiculous? Do you guys understand what is going on? All they did was give you a little bit of kindling and you let the fire. You set the fire. All they did was give you the tools to do it. They bring in the crack into the inner city. You take it. They bring in the guns to the inner city. You take it. They give you the tools so that you can go and shoot each other over crack cocaine. You can't blame anyone for those choices and decisions but you. You can't blame poverty for that. And then those of you that talk about your ancestors are ashamed of you today. What are you talking about? Especially those of you whose ancestors came over here willingly on a boat, arrived in Ellis Island with not even a dime in their pocket, and they struggled and they made a life, and now their posterity is no longer living in a ghetto. That's right. They worked together, they worked honest, and they worked hard. Some of them becoming entrepreneurs, some of them going on to become doctors and lawyers and business people, earning an honest living. They didn't use poverty to go and live a life of violence. They overcame poverty with education. That's how they did it. They educated themselves. They became excellent in their work, and they became undeniable in their work. There are stereotypes that exist today based on what the forefathers did when they arrived on Ellis Island. Did you know that? There's a reason for some of these stereotypes. What do you want to be known for? What legacy do you want to leave your posterity? Do you want to hand them down a posterity, a legacy of violence and ignorance? Or do you want to hand them down a legacy of achievement, proving that even in the midst of adversity, you were able to overcome? You didn't have to sell crack in the street. You didn't have to gun down your brother because your forefathers, your ancestors didn't have to do that. They worked hard. And once again, there are stereotypes that exist to this day, and they exist for a reason. All right? Why do you think when people get in trouble, especially, the elite, they find themselves what? A quote unquote Jewish lawyer. Why do you think that is? How do you think they earned that reputation? Because they became excellent in their craft to the point where they became favorited over others. Call it what you want. But that's what happened. That is what happened. They worked hard and they found a niche for themselves, and boom, bam, the rest is history. What are you going to be known for? Failure? You can't blame nobody but yourself for that. There are people who are born under worse financial situations than you, who do not make that decision and choice that you made to become a gangster, to become violent. All right? Stop using excuses. You need to pick up a book. I don't care what book you pick up. Just pick up any book by Thomas Sowell or Walter Williams. Pick up anyone. It don't matter which one. They're very prolific in their writings. Heck, you don't even have to do that, because I know some of you can't read or read that well. So just right here on YouTube, just type in Thomas Sowell or type in Walter Williams, and you know what? It'll come up. It'll come up. All of their interviews and speeches and all of that good stuff right there for you. hundreds of videos here on YouTube for you to educate yourself. They even have audio books for all of their books. Did you know that? Well, you can educate yourself, and you can see how some of these individuals grew up in situations and circumstances similar, if not worse, to your own, and here they are today. All right? You do not have to use poverty as an excuse. Do you know how many people grow up in poverty worldwide? Some even in third world countries. I'm not trying to hear that. Some in war-torn countries, and they still don't make the decisions and choices that you guys are making here in the States. The world's superpower, the richest country on the face of the earth, or at least it used to be. The poorest person in this country still has more than the poor person in a third world country or a war-torn country. And look what choices you've made. You cannot blame anyone for your decisions. I understand some people were born in some jacked up circumstances. I get it. You can't pick and choose the families you were born into. I understand. Some of you didn't have parents. You didn't have a mother or a father. You grew up in the street or in group homes or in the child protective system, foster system. I understand all of that. I get it. But you know what, though? Let me share something with you. You know, back in high school, if I wanted extra money, instead of selling crack on the corner, I humbled myself and I went and got a job working at McDonald's. See, that's what we did. We went to go work at McDonald's or Burger King or Wendy's or a store in the mall if we could get them. We worked in retail and restaurants. That's what we did. You want them new Nikes, them new Jordans? Well, go work part-time after school, and you know what? Save your money, you can buy them. All right? That's what we did. We humbled ourselves to go and work with our hands, getting a paycheck, paying taxes, you know? Because that was the better alternative. At least I could hold my head up high and not have to look over my shoulder thinking someone's going to gun me down. All right? And I didn't have to risk being locked up because I wasn't breaking the law. All right? In the words of one of the wisest men that ever lived, Jim Carrey's character in Liar Liar. What am I going to do, man? I'm in trouble again. What am I going to do? Well, I don't know. Stop breaking the law. Remember that scene? You're my lawyer. Advise me. What should I do? He said, stop breaking the law. That's what you need to do. Stop breaking the law, and you'll be all right. All right? It's just that simple. You do not have to go that way. How did we get here to the point where, like Biggie said, he felt his choices was either you sling, crack, rock, or you got a wicked jump shot? Who said that those were your only two ways to get out of the ghetto? He didn't mention anything about education. He didn't mention becoming an entrepreneur of some kind, creating a service or a product that people wanted. He didn't mention none of that. You know what else we used to do when we were kids, man? I'm gonna put y'all in the game. Now, I know the world has changed, so some of you young people don't have these opportunities like we had. We had to create and make our own opportunities, okay? So here's what we did. This one hustle we had where you would go and you would hustle groceries at the grocery store. Now, this was before they had courtesy clerks. So you would carry people's groceries to their car and stuff like that, and they'd give you $1, okay? Now, to a little, 11, 12-year-old kid, if you can make $12, $13 a day doing that, hey, that's good money. Okay, that was a nice little side hustle, little hustle. At one point, I remember also, just again, when you're in elementary school or you're in middle school, you really can't work until like you're 14 or 15, 16 in some states, whatever. But my granddaddy let me go to work with him, and he paid me to go to work with him. Nice little side hustle, and we were cleaning office buildings and stuff. So, again, I wasn't out there shoplifting and stealing and snatching old ladies' purses. I always worked. All right. I always got my hustle on. But all right, at 12, 13 years of age, I started doing that, hustling groceries, working with my grandfather when I could, and he would pay me out of his own pocket. It was a nice little thing. At one point, we had I had a newspaper route, and but what happened is, again, smart people thinking smart. Here's what will happen. In the little, I wasn't in the projects, but it was hoodish, put it that way. But white boys would come in during the summer, and they would see us kids hanging out, playing, whatever, and be like, "Hey, y'all want to come make some money?" And we'd be like, "Yeah." They'd be like, "All right, come on, we're gonna you gonna help me? I got a paper route. I got this huge paper routes, and we're gonna pay you for doing X, Y, and Z." Now I'm gonna tell you what they did, because they were smart. They wasn't stupid. They would be like, "All right, let me go where you live at. Let's go holler at your parents real quick. Let them know. Let me introduce myself so they know. Let me give them my number. They can call me if they need to, whatever. We'll tell where you're going to be at. This is what we're going to do." And we did that for a minute during the summer. That was another way to make money. We had paper routes. And then I remember some dude was running for office. I don't remember if it was governor, mayor, senator, whatever. But anyway, his crew swooped in and was like, "Hey, help us campaign. We'll pay you X amount of dollars." We was like, "Bet, let's do it." And we was mad young. I don't know if I was 11 or 12 during that time. But anyway, he came in, and you know what? We helped this person campaign and got paid, passing out flyers and going door to door and doing stuff like that, handing out, bumper stickers or whatever. There was always little hustles like that. And we was little. We were little kids, man. Okay. Now, when we got older, guess what else we did? Shoveling snow. All right, shoveling snow, taking out the trash, the trash, helping the little old lady. All right. One time my brother had a hookup. Man, again, we was young. He found some rich white lady. And he was helping her do landscaping and stuff all summer, making good money. We've been hustling, grinding, being entrepreneurs since we was kids, man. All right, like straight up. That's what it was, man. We got that money. All right. Oh, I see you, Nathan. Man, well, we talking like 400 years ago, all right? Back when Thomas Jefferson was walking around. It was a long time ago, man. A long time ago. I'm telling you, man, it was always a hustle and a grind. And that's what, we was inspired by that. We was always trying to do that. Oh, I remember the recycling the cans and stuff. That didn't pay a lot of money, but it was money for us. For a little kid, man, that's candy money, potato chips and soda and cookies all summer. And like I said, when I got a little older, every time I make some money, I call my mom and be like, "Mom, what you need?" She'd be like, "Yeah, bring me some cigarettes. We need some bread. We need some more eggs, whatever." And then I felt like a man, a little kid feeling like a grown man, because I'm able to buy food and stuff for the house. Made me feel real good. Chest real stuck out. So I learned hustling way back then. Babysitting was a good thing too. Your neighbors, you know what I'm saying? Babysitting. All right. I was babysitting. All right. Now you'd be like, who would trust a little kid to babysit? Well, let me explain something to you. See, this little kid right here is the oldest of 5. I have 4 other brothers. I'm the oldest. I've been babysitting since I was 5. You can laugh all you want. I'm just telling you what it is. I learned responsibility at a very, very early age. So that prepared me for the rest of life. Responsibility is something that I had to contend with at an early age. And I still had an incredible childhood too. My childhood was off the chain. So I have no problems with that. I know a lot of people's childhoods was not. You know, I only had one parent. I was raised by one parent. My mother and my grandmother raised me. All right, on my mom's side. So my mom and my mom's mom. That's who raised me. Nobody else had a hand in raising me. All right, so don't tell me I don't know what struggle is. All right, I know what that is. I can talk like that. All right, I didn't grow up with no ivory tower with a silver spoon in my mouth. I didn't go to no Ivy League schools or private schools or none of that stuff. All right, it's what it is. I learned how to hustle from a kid. You know, not selling crack, not selling drugs, not ripping people off, not doing scams. All right, when I say hustle, I mean grinding. I mean like an entrepreneur. It's your own business. True story. My oldest child had a dog walking business, and she was what, 10, 11 years old. She was making so much bread at 10 years old that other people in the neighborhood was getting jealous because she had her game down. She was walking everybody's animals. Seriously. And some adults were trying to get their dog walking business off the ground and started beefing with my 10-year-old daughter. Jealous of a 10-year-old, grown folk jealous of a 10-year-old. All right. My oldest loves animals and even insects. All right. They just took to her. And like I said, it even got to the point, man, where some people was trying to jukes my kid, man. They want to pay my kid. And I had to go over and knock on some doors and be like, yo, can you run my daughter her money real quick? All right. And it got like that because people were starting to get jealous. Adults, man. Then they were like, I ain't paying her no money. And then, you didn't know she had a daddy. You probably just thought she just had a mama. No, she got a daddy. She got both of her parents in the home. And yes, I'm knocking on your door. Can you run my daughter her money? You should have seen the look on people's face when she showed up at their door with her daddy. Needless to say, she ran me my money. He ran me my money. All right. Most of the time it was the dudes. The females always paid. They were really nice. They loved my daughter. But I'm just letting y'all know, it don't have to be like this. I'm trying to encourage the gangsters out there. You ain't got to do that. You don't need I don't care how bad your economic situation is. You don't need to hurt nobody. You don't need to be selling drugs either. And for my females out there, the same go for you. You ain't got to strip naked in a club. All right. You ain't got to strip and for money. You don't have to use that. You don't have to use sex for money. You ain't got to be no hoe or no thought. Who said that that's the only way you could make money is if you were pretty and you use that? No. There were females out there hustling too. All right. Anyone could hustle groceries and stuff. Anybody can do stuff. You do not need to be violent. You do not need to be an animal. And look at the result. Thank God. I've never been arrested. I've never been locked up. I've never been to jail, never been to prison. But at one point in my life, I was an officer of the law. I did do that briefly. But you see what I'm saying? If you do the right thing, you'll be okay. Now, you know what we do on this program? We don't beat around the bush. We don't make excuses. We don't avoid difficult subjects. And what we're talking about today is a difficult subject. But I present to you the alternative, because if not, then we go back to this. Murders in New York City increased by 79%. Is that what you want? So that's what you want. I'm giving you an alternative. I'm giving you a way out. All right. Now, the problem that we have in these inner cities like this, to me, the riots are just exposing what was already there. The Black family has been so decimated in this country by its own making. Again, it's not about your situation. It's about how you respond in your situation. I'm not saying that they didn't have help. I'm not saying that at all. What I am saying is that you have to take responsibility for your actions. I'm not talking about things perpetrated against them. I'm talking about their actions. Case in point, I know someone's going to bring up and say, well, the whole welfare system, was designed to keep the Black man down and to destroy the Black family, blah, 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 blah. You take the man out the home and all this other stuff. Now, see, I will counter that with this. All right, I see you and I raise you this. How about that? That is true. That is very true. Very, very true. But do you know why that's true? I'll tell you why it's true. Because if you weren't having children out of wedlock in the first place, they would never have been able to put that rule in place. But because you were having children out of wedlock, the man and the woman were not married. That's why they said, well, he can't be up in here like that. But if you were married, you wouldn't have had that problem to begin with. So this is what happens, ladies and gentlemen, when two consenting adults decide to have unprotected relations. It produces a child. Who would have thought that? This is breaking news on this channel only. You will only hear this here. When a man and a woman come together in a romantic way, it produces an offspring. I don't think anyone knew that. I think that's the key right there. If people knew that, we could solve the problem, don't you think? That is the issue. You got two people unmarried, fornicating, producing offspring. The guy jets, he breaks out. The woman's left there, stuck with a kid to raise on her own. Ladies, if you continue to operate in this way and you have a child, you become impregnated, it is your fault. The woman will say, how is it my fault? He participated too. All right, I'm gonna quote someone I never think that I would have to quote on this show, but I like what they said because it's true. When a man and a woman decide to lay down and have unprotected relations and they're not married, they decide to fornicate, you are agreeing to have a child because you both know what you're doing. You know the ramifications, repercussions of what you are doing. All right? You know what you're doing. Female, talking to you right now. It's your fault because you let that man put a baby in you. And some of you young ladies are letting several different dudes put babies in you. That's on you. You let that man put a baby in you. You knew that man was out of work, didn't have a job, laying on his mama's couch, and you let him put a baby in you. That's on you. Young man, you knew your situation, and yet you willingly put a baby in her. So you are both at fault. And now you have all these feminists saying, my body, my choice. You're right, it is your body, and you did make a choice. You did make a choice, and it is your body. You're responsible for what you do with your body. Now do you see why this cycle perpetuates itself? You're guaranteed to be in poverty just off of that situation alone. Single female, single dude, She lets him put a baby in her, and then he rolls out. That's a guaranteed poverty situation. Where is she going? She's going down to the social welfare office to get food stamps and an EBT card. Where else is she going? All right. This is what it is, ladies and gentlemen. All right. No one wants to have these discussions because they're tough. They're difficult. But this is what's happening. What you see happening right now in these major cities with people destroying each other, murdering each other, is the result of a sin nature unchecked. Sin is being allowed to run amok unchecked. Once again, where are the Black leaders in regards to this situation? Why aren't they putting a stop to that? Why aren't they dealing with this from the family standpoint? What is wrong with you, Mr. and Mrs. Black leadership? All you hear them talking about is the Black Lives Matter movement agenda, which has nothing to do with Black people. It's about the political agenda of the LGBTQ community. It's even in their own writing when you look at what they stand for and what their agenda and goal is. Black is listed at the bottom of the list, not at the top. The LGBTQ is listed at the top. The Black is at the bottom. That should let you know that this is not a Black movement. It is a political LGBTQ movement. Let's do it. Let's get it. All right? I'm telling you, the Black family has been destroyed, and you're looking at the results of decades of decadence. And it's a shame. It's a shame. They perpetuate sinful, destructive lifestyles that end in famine for the Black race. They encourage promiscuity, out of wedlock, fornication. If you turn to BET on any given day, all you will see is acts of fornication after acts of fornication after acts of fornication after acts of fornication. All right? And it's a fact. This is what you wanted, though. Because Black people, you have voted for the last 50 years for the same candidates who have done the same things to your cities, and nothing has changed. But this is what happens when you kick God out of the government, you kick God out of the classroom, you kick God out of the home. This is what you get. This is the result of unchecked sin. This is also the result of false teachers and false prophets and false doctrine that help to perpetuate the sinful lifestyles that you are seeing. All right? It is what it is. All right? It is what it is. Again, Black entertainment television has nothing to do with Black people. It has everything to do with perpetuating the sinful lifestyle to keep the Black family in this cycle of failure and poverty of mind, body, and spirit. Just like that other, what's that channel? Lifetime. They claim that was for women, by women, and all that other stuff. No, it's not. On any given day, you can turn to the Lifetime channel and see, and what do you see? You see the destruction of women. Every other movie or show is about a woman getting raped or abused by her husband or beaten, stabbed, murdered. It's just a cycle. Rape, stab, murder, rape, stab, murder, rape, stab, murder, beaten, beaten again, raped, beaten, stabbed, murdered. How in the world is that inspirational TV for women when everything on there is the destruction of women? I'm like, really? Can a woman catch a break? Do you have a positive program here somewhere? You keep saying it's for women. I don't see that. I don't see it. I don't see it. I don't see it. What's up? I'm just saying, man. Is crazy. All right. Now think about it. Think about what happens. See, this is another thing too, and I heard someone mentioning this the other day too. And I thought it was really interesting. Again, how the media is an extension of the federal government, and the government controls the narrative. So, and this is funny. Now, I saw this interview, and they were talking about, you know, what's happening in Black society and with the Black family and things of that nature. And they totally see, this is what I'm saying. This is the dishonest type of interviews and talks I'm talking about. The subject was about why is it that, especially a lot of Black people in entertainment, why is it that you know, a lot of them have to join in this organization and sell their souls in order to succeed, and then if they decide they want to get out, the only way for them to get out is to be totally and utterly destroyed. They never get to walk away clean, right? So then the guy that was being interviewed was like, yeah, but you know, a lot of people think that, you know, because in order for a Black person to be successful, they have to go that route. But I don't think that's true. I think that it's just people who are not successful looking at it like that. Well, this person must have done this, and must have done that, right? And I was like, very interesting. I said, so you're not dealing with all of the celebrities who have come out and admitted that and told you about that. You're also ignoring even so the white celebrities that have come out and admitted that. Some have even died after admitting that, Black and white. They didn't touch that in the interview. The interview I'm talking about is the Vlad interview when he interviewed the dude Polite. And I was like, yeah, that's very interesting that you guys touched on this subject, but you didn't deal with the subject. You just talked around it. He didn't address the facts of that. Didn't address it at all. And that was the only response. Not dealing with the actual claims that's already out there and proof. You know what I'm saying? Look at the destructive. What is TV? TV is programming. That's why it's called programming. You're being programmed. You're being MK Ultra trauma-based mind control. As a matter of fact, if you listen to the individuals that are responsible for even giving the LGBTQ community its political power base, they explain to you how they did it and how they use MK Ultra mind control to make it acceptable in the public. And there's a several step process in that. And one of the processes, one of the most important, were to link with the Black civil rights call to push the agenda. So the civil rights movement is your Trojan horse, and then you use that to slip it in, and then now you've taken over the cause. It's, to me, all it is COINTELPRO on steroids. But quote unquote Black people are too naive to see that, or maybe they've been bought off and so they don't want to see it. And this leads us back to, this is the result. A 3-year-old gets gunned down in the Chicago street. A 3-year-old, a baby. Not only do you destroy your babies in the womb, but you also destroy them on the street. And just a few weeks prior to that, it was the most violent day ever recorded in the Windy City. While Chicago was roiled by another day of protest and looting in the wake of the George Floyd situation, 18 people were killed on a Sunday, May 31st, making it the single most violent day in Chicago in 6 decades, 60 years, according to the University of Chicago Crime Lab. The lab's data doesn't go back further than 1961. So if the problems that we are facing were just very temporary in nature, most people would probably be willing to ride it out and say, oh, it'll get better. Unfortunately, it appears that things aren't going to be getting significantly better anytime soon. Now that the lockdowns have ended, the number of confirmed COVID-19 cases in the U.S. is starting to surge greater than it was before, during, and after the lockdowns. Now, we witnessed last Friday more than 30,000 new confirmed cases in the U.S. for the first time in many weeks. And it was actually the worst day so far for newly confirmed cases for the globe as a whole. In other words, the coronavirus pandemic is getting worse. Whether you want to call it the first wave or the second wave, the truth is that cases are surging, and that could have very serious implications for the months ahead. So if people are bugging and losing their minds right now, what do you think they're going to do if and when things are locked down for a second time? Now, meanwhile, the U.S. economy continues to deteriorate very rapidly. Nearly 50 million Americans have now filed new claims for unemployment benefits since the pandemic first began. More than 100,000 businesses have permanently closed their doors. 100,000 businesses. Do you know how many jobs that is, that those 100,000 businesses created? They're just telling you 100,000 businesses. They're not telling you how many jobs. So if we were to assume that was 100,000 sole proprietors with no employees, okay, that's still another 100,000 job losses. But if you figure the average business here had at least 5 employees, well, then there you go, 500,000, another 500,000. And it can grow exponentially based on how many employees make up that 100,000 businesses. Now, U.S. consumers have skipped payments on more than 100 million loans. It is an economic meltdown of unprecedented size and scope, and many more months of extreme economic pain lie ahead of us. 2021 is going to be off the chain. On top of everything else, we are in an election year, and even a very small spark could set off more rioting, looting, and violence, and even suspend the election. At this point, tensions are so high in this country that a recent survey found that 34% of all Americans believe that there could be a civil war within the next 5 years. The latest Rasmussen report, National Telephone and Online Survey, finds that 34% of likely U.S. voters think the United States will experience a second civil war sometime in the next 5 years. But that includes only 9% who say it's very likely. I've never seen our nation so deeply divided in my entire lifetime, and that makes me incredibly sad. At a time when we should be coming together like never before, we are allowing strife, discord, anger, and hatred to divide us even more deeply. A house that is divided will surely fall. And the future of America looks extremely bleak if we continue down this path. As one lone individual, there isn't much that you can do to stop what is coming. But at least you can try to get somewhere safe before everything falls apart. But if you're going to move, you will need to do it quickly because, as we have been talking about, a lot of people are starting to think the same thing. Now, with that being said, though, movement is still limited. All right, you're still not going to be able to travel internationally at this point because it was I just saw it in a news piece that came across my desk that Europe, the entire EU, has shut its borders to Americans. So if you were thinking that you were going to relocate abroad, your chance to do that is long gone. All right, borders have not been reopened. All right, so you need to know that going forward. You got to think about that. Now, on a funnier note, guess who else has filed for Chapter 11? Chuck E. Cheese has filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. So those of you who thought you were going to get one more chance to go back to Chuck E. Cheese and eat some pizza that they pulled out of the trash and threw in the microwave to warm up for you and serve to you, your opportunity to do so is over. They're going away. They're going the way of the dodo bird. Yeah, they're out of here. Chuck E. Cheese. Wow. What was it? Robot Chicken. Robot Chicken did a funny skit on Chuck E. Cheese. It was absolutely hilarious. All right, so let me say this, man, straight up. Let me say this. There's a lot of things that we really need to talk about. And we're going to get there, but it won't be today, but we're going to eventually get there. All right? This is a coordinated effort to take down the United States. And I can't believe that all these special interest groups are being allowed to have this kind of political power to do it. There are some very powerful forces at work in the background that are all but ensuring that the U.S. collapses at the end of this. That's the end game for what is going on. All right? They want collapse of the American empire. Okay? This is what they want. I've been warning you guys about that for a long time. I told you a huge algo shift was underway as well. Some of y'all didn't believe me, and then you started seeing these reports, and then all of a sudden, oh, snap. This is getting crazy. Now, we already know about the markets being controlled, but did you know that not only is your news rigged, but especially how social media does their algorithms is also rigged? Employees, whistleblowers at Facebook admit that they rigged the game. They have revealed bias against conservatives. Did you know that? A Facebook content moderator has come forward to reveal rampant bias against conservatives at the social media giant. Ryan Hartwig, an Arizona-based Facebook content moderator for third-party contractor Cognizant, says he witnessed egregious double standards, both targeting conservatives or favoring liberals. I was seeing them interfering on a global level in elections. I saw a blatant exception that just targeted conservatives or favored liberals. And, we're deleting on average 300 posts or actioning 300 posts a day, said Hartwig, adding, if you magnify that by however many content moderators there are on a global scale, that's a lot of stuff that's getting taken down. Hartwig wore a hidden camera to document reviewing of content and office interactions in an interview with Project Veritas CEO James O'Keefe. Hartwig said, although he signed a confidentiality agreement, he can no longer ignore the suppression of Facebook's content supporting President Donald Trump, Republican causes, or the conservative agenda, with a massive exception to the company's public position on protecting political speech across the platform. And that's a quote from Project Veritas. That's right, Project Veritas. That was the tipping point. Knowing about what I knew about how they were giving exceptions for the policy, I knew that it was likely that it was happening elsewhere on a global scale, said Hartwig. Just seeing such blatant bias from Facebook really bothered them. Content moderators expressed hostility to Trump and his supporters. One of our moderators, Hartwig recorded, was Israel Amperan, who he said typifies the worldview of most of the content moderators he encountered. Trump supporters are blinking crazy blanks that every other blank word out of their mouth is, come take it, seal the border, said Amperin. Come take it refers to the come and take it slogan Texan colonists put on their flag after the Mexican government demanded they turn in their cannon. Amperin said he targeted content by Trump supporters because it scared him. Quote, I hate government as much as the next blanking person, but you're not going to catch me riding over the blanking. It's like impeachment. It's like a PRAW. Trump called it a blanking coup, and it's like that should scare you more than anything, end quote. A PRAW, or Python Reddit API wrapper, is a Reddit program to allow users to more quickly and easily post on Facebook. Hartwig also videotaped Steve Grimmett, who is a team lead at Facebook, Cognizant's content review, and who said Trump supporters are in the same speech category as Hitler under the Facebook policy on dangerous individuals and organizations. Quote, one of my projects before now was hate, Grimmett said. I spent quite a bit of time looking at pictures of hate organizations, Hitler, Nazis, MAGA, Proud Boys, all that stuff all day long. MAGA is the acronym for Trump's 2016 slogan, Make America Great Again. Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg testified before Congress that only speech Facebook targets for deletion is speech advocating hate, violence, and terrorism, but not political speech. So he lied before Congress on that one. Facebook waived hate speech policies to advance its pro-pride LGBTQ agenda. One example was when Facebook Cognizant policy and training manager Sean Browder told all the content moderators in Hartwig's section for the 2018 Pride Month hate speech would be allowed to stay up if it was in support of the LGBTQ agenda. So basically, what it sounds like here is that the LGBTQ agenda, this organization, is like a secret society with agents at every level of government. And this is really scary at this point. Hartwig said Browder told the moderators to implement the special policy, which in the case of Pride Month, allowed attacks on a single group of people, quoting Browder, quote, hey, we're making the exceptions for our policy to favor the LGBT community. O'Keefe, hate speech is allowed if it's intended to raise awareness for pride, LGBTQ, so hate speech is allowed in some cases, but apparently not others. Hartwig, yeah. According to a screenshot of the policy captured by Hartwig, anything that is a delete per our hate speech policies, but is intended to raise awareness for pride LGBTQ, this may occur especially in terms of attacking straight white males. Hartwig also videotaped Steve Grimmett, who is a team lead at Facebook, Cognizant's content review, and who said Trump supporters are in the same speech category as Hitler under the Facebook policy on dangerous individuals and organizations. One of my projects before now was hate. He said he spent quite a bit of time looking at pictures of hate organizations. Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg testified that Facebook speech targets for deletion, any speech advocating, hate and stuff like that. So one example was when Facebook content policy was, and training manager Sean Browder told all the content moderators in Hardwick section to, basically give favor to the LGBTQ. So again, here it is, we have this going on behind the scenes. While they say we don't do that, that's exactly what they are doing. All right. So this is really funny in a sad kind of a way that this is happening. All right. It's crazy, man. It is crazy what we're seeing here. Let me see here. Another thing. Let's see. Okay. Yeah, Black Lives Matter, for those that don't know, is George Soros funded. All right. The organization, some people call it the gay mafia and all that, because that's basically what it is. If you do or say something they don't like and they can use you to further their agenda, then yeah, they'll drag you through the media. They tear you up in the media. So yeah, that's why they call it that. You can't say nothing against them or about them in any kind of way. All right, another thing that should really scare you guys, though, is that did you know that the regulators eased the Volcker rule ahead of the stress test? Did y'all know that? Bloomberg reported that the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency and the FDIC have approved changes to the Volcker rule, further easing its provisions allowing banks to increase their dealings with certain funds by providing more clarity on what's allowed. The OCC also scrapped the requirement that lenders hold margin when trading derivatives with their affiliates, according to Bloomberg. That right there is the most dangerous thing I think I've seen in a while. Let me explain to you guys that are not in the know from the business side of the trading world what this means. Okay, so whenever you're trading futures or forex, right, you have to put up what is called an initial margin. And then with futures, you got to also have what is called a maintenance margin. Maintenance margin allows for you to hold the position overnight. Okay, that helps to mitigate the risk of ruin. All right, sort of like a stop loss on top of your stop loss. So let's say you thought the S&P was gonna rally 100 points today, right? And you wanted to go in and get long the E-mini S&P 500. One way to do that would be to buy one contract on the E-mini S&P 500 futures to take a long position. Well, in order to do that, your broker may say, you know what, we need $5,000 from you for margin that we need to set aside for you to put this trade on. So should the market move against you in a powerful way, that money set aside just for the margin itself is there as a cushion. For the OCC to scrap that requirement for lenders to hold margin when they're trading derivatives with their affiliates, that right there is a recipe for disaster. Because I'm going to tell you what's going to happen. You're going to get some persons to do something nefarious. They're going to come in there. They're going to put on a big whopping position, looking to get broke off. And if it moves against them, and they're not going to have the money, and they won't be able to meet the margin, and they'll be put on margin call, and it's going to be a disaster for the market, ladies and gentlemen. You don't ever want to see them remove margin requirements when trading leveraged instruments. When you're trading futures and forex, you gotta have some kind of margin up in there just to protect you and the firm and the market for that matter. As Bloomberg notes, the revisions will complete what watchdogs appointed by President Donald Trump have referred to as Volcker 2.0, a softening of one of the most controversial regulations included in the 2010 Dodd-Frank Act. By the way, that 2010 Dodd-Frank Act, they snuck that in too. And they pulled that on us in the middle of the trading day. I will never forget that. Cost us a lot of money in the spot metals market, a lot of money. The Fed is expected to sign off on the proposal later today, perhaps when it announces the results from the latest stress test. All right. Wow. That is crazy, man. So the Volcker 2.0 allows banks to take stakes in venture capital funds that were previously banned in an effort to provide greater flexibility in sponsoring funds that provide loans to companies. The agencies are reversing a requirement that banks post margin for trades between their affiliates, and the industry and regulators argue that the current rule is too tough. Critics say the extra cushion against losses that banks have had to maintain helps protect subsidiaries that are backed by the federal government, including through deposit insurance. All right, so this right here, ladies and gentlemen, I believe this part right here was the last piece of the puzzle they needed to bring down the United States. I think this right here, this Volcker rule, all right, 2.0, the relaxing of that, this is what's going to kill it. This is what's going to do it. Straight up. Straight up. I'm telling you, this is it. For those of you that wonder, this is it. So you'll be able to look back and you'll see. All right? You're going to see it. This is what it is. I don't care what history records. This is what's going to bring down the U.S. This right here. One day in the future near you, some idiot at one of these banks is going to do an exorbitant trade, probably in excess of $1 billion trade, and is not going to have the margin, not going to be able to cover it when the losses move against them, and it's going to collapse the economy in the U.S., like for real. This right here is the craziest thing I've ever seen in my life. Like for real. I've never even heard or seen anything as crazy as that. I've never seen anything like it. All right. So my next question to you guys is, are you aware of what is happening? This is a coordinated effort to destroy the country. And they are, in my opinion, working with special interest groups to make this happen. I really believe it in my heart. I believe it in my heart. Because there's no way that they will allow in the past these kind of groups to do this. But they're doing it. Now, you've been hearing Black Lives Matter on the forefront, but you haven't really heard too much about Antifa. What and who is Antifa? The first thing I think when I hear it, I think of a terrorist organization that is backed and funded by special interest groups like George Soros and maybe even Bill Gates. Ladies and gentlemen, put your big boy pants and your big girl pants on because it's time to go in. We need to talk about this because these are the things that are being used to bring down the United States. All right? And you need to know, I'm telling you right now. I'm telling you right now. All right? Right now. You're hearing it from me right now. Antifa, along with this vocal rule, is like the perfect weapon. Empirical and anecdotal evidence shows that Antifa is, in fact, highly networked, well-funded, and has a global presence. It has a flat organizational structure with dozens and possibly hundreds of local groups that we would call cells, just like a terrorist organization. Antifa's stated long-term objective, both in America and abroad, is to establish a communist world order in the United States. Antifa's immediate aim is to bring about the demise of the Trump administration and the country as you know it. A common tactic used by Antifa in the United States and Europe is to employ extreme violence and destruction of public and private property to goad the police into a reaction, which then proves Antifa's claim that the government is fascist. Did you hear me? Antifa is not only officially tolerated, but it is being paid by the German government to fight the far right. Benita Roll, German journalist, the Nur Zurich Zeitung, June the 2nd, 2020, writes, out of cowardice, its members cover their faces and keep their names secret. Antifa constantly threatens violence and attacks against politicians and police officers. It promotes senseless damage to property amounting to vast sums. I have to tell you, this is ridiculous. U.S. Attorney General William Barr has blamed Antifa, a militant anti-fascist movement, which is more, see, they're calling it a movement. I'm calling it a terrorist organization. All right. For the violence that has erupted at George Floyd protests across the United States, the violence instigated and carried out by Antifa and other similar groups in connection with the rioting is domestic terrorism and will be treated accordingly, he said. Barr also said that the federal government has evidence that Antifa hijacked legitimate protests around the country to engage in lawlessness, violent rioting, arson, looting of businesses, and public property assaults on law enforcement officers and innocent people, and even the murder of a federal agent. Earlier, U.S. President Donald J. Trump had instructed the U.S. Justice Department to designate Antifa as a terrorist organization. You guys have seen the video footage. I posted a link a few episodes ago, and it showed where they were providing bricks for the protesters and everything. This was such a coordinated effort. It was disgusting to watch. Academics and media outlets sympathetic to Antifa have argued that the group cannot be classified as a terrorist organization because they claim it is a vaguely defined protest movement that lacks a centralized structure, which is also false. Mark Bray, vocal apologist for Antifa in America and author of the book Antifa, the Anti-Fascist Handbook, asserts that Antifa is not an overreaching organization with a chain of command. That is also false. Just because they do things differently doesn't mean that that's not exactly what they are doing. If they didn't have some type of a structure or order, then how would the local people get their marching orders and know where to go and set up these attacks? Someone is giving commands somewhere. Empirical and anecdotal evidence shows that Antifa is in fact highly networked, well-funded, and has a global presence. It has a flat organizational structure with dozens of possible hundreds of local groups. Not surprisingly, the U.S. Department of Justice is currently investigating individuals linked to Antifa as a step to unmasking the broader organization. In the United States, Antifa's ideology, tactics, and goals, far from being novel, are borrowed almost entirely from Antifa groups in Europe, where so-called Antifa fascist groups in one form or another have been active almost without interruption for a century. For a century. For those that are not so educated, a century is equal to 100 years. This is not a new organization. What is Antifa? Antifa can be described as a transnational insurgency movement that endeavors, often with extreme violence, to subvert liberal democracy with the aim of replacing global capitalism with communism. They want to replace capitalism with communism. All right? They want to take China's blueprint and make that the blueprint for the world. Antifa's stated long-term objective, both in America and abroad, is to establish a communist world order. In the United States, Antifa's immediate aim is to bring about the demise of the Trump administration in order to bring about a communist regime. How would they do that? How is getting Trump out of office analogous to establishing a communist regime? Oh, I know, because the Democratic Party is communist. Socialism equals communism. Antifa's nemesis include law enforcement, which is viewed as enforcing the established order. A common tactic used by Antifa in the United States and Europe is to employ extreme violence and destruction of public and private property to goad the police into reaction, which then proves Antifa's claim that the government is fascist. Antifa claims to oppose fascism, a term it often uses as a broad brush pejorative to discredit those who hold opposing political beliefs. The traditional meaning of fascism, as defined by Webster's dictionary, is a totalitarian governmental system led by a dictator and emphasizing an aggressive nationalism, militarism, and often racism. There are a lot of isms that lead this. Antifa holds the Marxist Leninist definition of fascism, which equates it with capitalism. The fight against fascism is only won when the capitalist system has been shattered and a classless society has been achieved, according to the German Antifa group Antifa Schichter. Aufbau München. I know I tore that name up. Germany's BFV Domestic Intelligence Agency and a special report on left-wing extremism noted this, quote, Antifa's fight against right-wing extremists is a smokescreen. The real goal remains the Burgish democratic state, which, in the reading of left-wing extremists, accepts and promotes fascism as a possible form of rule and therefore does not fight it sufficiently. Ultimately, it is argued fascism is rooted in the social and political structures of capitalism. Accordingly, left-wing extremists and their anti-fascist activities focus above all on the elimination of the capitalist system, end quote. That is their agenda, ladies and gentlemen. Matthew North, author of An Outsider's Guide to Antifa, Volume 2, explained Antifa's ideology this way. The basic philosophy of Antifa focuses on the battle between three basic forces: fascism, racism, and capitalism, all three of which are interrelated, according to Antifa, with fascism being considered the final expression or stage of capitalism. Capitalism being a means to oppress, and racism being an oppressive mechanism related to fascism. In an essay, What Antifa and the Organizational Fascists Have in Common, Anthony Muller, a German professor of economics who currently teaches in Brazil, described how Antifa's militant anti-capitalism masquerading as anti-fascism reveals its own fascism. Quote, after the left has pocketed the concept of liberalism and turned the word into the opposite of its original meaning, the Antifa movement uses a false terminology to hide its true agenda. While calling themselves anti-fascist and declaring fascism, the enemy, the Antifa itself, is a foremost fascist movement. The members of Antifa are not opponents to fascism, but themselves its genuine representatives. Communism, socialism, and fascism are united by the common band of anti-capitalism and anti-liberalism. The Antifa movement is a fascist movement. The enemy of this movement is not fascism, but liberty, peace, and prosperity, end quote. Ladies and gentlemen, this is what it is. All right? This is what it is. Right there in a nutshell. But you may ask, what is Antifa's ideological origins? The ideological origins of Antifa can be traced back to the Soviet Union roughly 100 years ago. In 1921 and 1922, the Communist International Comintern developed the so-called United Front tactic to unify the working masses through agitation and organization. At the international level and in each individual country against capitalism and fascism, two terms that often were used interchangeably. The world's first anti-fascist group, which is Arditi del Popolo, which is the People's Courageous Militia, was founded in Italy in June 1921 to resist the rise of Benito Mussolini's National Fascist Party, which itself was established to prevent the possibility of a Bolshevik revolution on the Italian peninsula. Many of the group's 20,000 members, consisting of communists and anarchists, later joined the International Brigades during the Spanish Civil War from 1936 to 1939. In Germany, the Communist Party of Germany established the parliamentary group Roter Frontkämpferbund, which is the Red Front Fighters League, in July 1924. The group was banned due to its extreme violence. Many of its 130,000 members continued their activities underground or in local successor organizations, such as the Kampfbund gegen den Faschismus, which is Fighting Alliance Against Fascism. In Slovenia, the militant anti-fascist movement, TIGR, was established in 1927 to oppose the Italianation of Slavic ethnic areas after the collapse of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. The group, which was disbanded in 1941, specialized in assassinating Italian police and military personnel. In Spain, the Communist Party established the Militias Antifascistas Obreras y Camponesas, which is the anti-fascist worker and peasant militias, which were active in the 1930s. The modern Antifa movement derives its name from a group called the Antifascist Action, founded in May 1932 by Stalinist leaders of the Communist Party of Germany. The group was established to fight fascist a term the party used to describe all of the other pro-capitalist political parties in Germany. The primary objective was to abolish capitalism, according to a detailed history of the group. The group, which had more than 1,500 founding members, went underground after Nazis seized power in 1933. So basically, here's what happened. The group was gaining a lot of traction and momentum, but then Hitler beat him to the power punch and made it to power before they were able to take over. So basically, all they did was chill for a minute, and now they're making their move. A German language pamphlet, 80 Years of Anti-Fascist Actions, describes in minute detail the continuous historical thread of the Antifa movement from its ideological origins in the 1920s to the present day. The document states, quote, Antifa fascism has always fundamentally been anti-capitalist strategy. This is why the symbol was never lost in its inspirational power. Anti-fascism is more of a strategy than an ideology, end quote. During the post-war period, Germany's Antifa movement reappeared in various manifestations, including the radical student protest movement of the 1960s and the leftist insurgency groups that were active throughout the 1970s, the 1980s, and the 1990s. The Red Army faction, known as RAF, also known as the Bader Meinhof Gang, was a Marxist urban guerrilla group that carried out assassinations, bombings, and kidnappings aimed at bringing revolution to West Germany, which the group characterized as a fascist holdover of the Nazi era. The group characterized as a fascist holdover of the Nazi era. Over the course of 3 decades, the RAF murdered more than 30 people and injured over 200. After the collapse of the communist government in East Germany between 1989 and 1990, it was discovered that the RAF had been given training, they had been given shelter, and they had been given supplies by the Stasi, the secret police of the former communist regime. Now, John Philip Jenkins, distinguished professor at history at Baylor University, described the group's tactics, which are similar to those used by Antifa today, as follows, quote, the goal of their terrorist campaign was to trigger an aggressive response from the government, which group members believe would spark a broader revolutionary movement. RAF founder Ulrike Meinhof explains the relationship between violent left-wing extremism and the police. Quote, the guy in uniform is a pig, not a human being. That means we don't have to talk to him, and it is wrong to talk to these people at all. And of course, you can shoot, end quote. Wow. Now, Bettina Roll, a German journalist and daughter of Meinhof, argues that the modern Antifa movement is a continuation of the Red Army faction. A continuation of the Red Army faction. The main difference is that unlike the RAF, Antifa's members are afraid to reveal their identities. That sounds like a secret society to me. In June 2020, essay published by the Swiss newspaper Neue Zürcher Zeitung, Roll also drew attention to the fact that Antifa is not only officially tolerated, but is being paid by the German government to fight the far right. Quote, the RAF idolized the communist dictatorships in China, like I said in the beginning, also in North Korea and North Vietnam and Cuba, which were transfigured by the new left as better countries on the right path to the best communism. You need to understand this fact, people. This is a fact that represents the truth of what the organization is trying to do. Open your eyes, people. All right? All right? Okay? This is what it is. I hope you are paying attention. I told you to put on your big boy and big girl pants. The flourishing left-wing radicalism in the West, which brutally strikes at the opening of the European Central Bank headquarters in Frankfurt at every G20 summit, at every G20 summit, every G20 summit, or every year on May the 1st in Berlin, has achieved the highest level of establishment in the state, not least thanks to support by quite a few MPs from political parties, journalists, and relevant experts. Sort of like what you see on the mainstream media here in the States. Compared to the RAF, the militant Antifa only lacks prominent faces. Out of cowardice, its members cover their faces and keep their names secret. Antifa constantly threatens violence and attacks against politicians and police officers. It promotes senseless damage to property amounting to vast sums. Nevertheless, MP Renee Kunast recently complained in the Bundestag that Antifa groups had not been adequately funded by the state in recent decades. She was concerned that NGOs and Antifa groups do not always have to struggle to raise money and can only conclude short-term employment contracts from year to year. There was applause from Alliance 90, the Greens from the left, and from the SPD deputies. One may ask the question of whether Antifa is something like an official RAF, a terrorist group with money from the state under the guise of fighting against the right. Germany's BFV, Domestic Intelligence Agency, explains Antifa's glorification of violence like this, quote, "For left-wing extremists, capitalism is interpreted as triggering wars, racism, ecological disasters, social inequality, and gentrification. Capitalism is therefore more than just a mere economic order. In left-wing extremist discourse, it determines the social and political form as well as the vision of a radical social and political reorganization. Whether anarchist or communist, parliamentary democracy as a so-called burgess from rule should be overcome in any case. For this reason, left-wing extremists usually ignore or legitimize human rights violations in socialist or communist dictatorships or in states that they allegedly see threatened by the West. To this day, both orthodox communists and autonomous activists justify, praise, and celebrate the left-wing terrorist Red Army faction or foreign left-wing terrorists as alleged liberation movements or even resistance fighters. And once again, they ignore the human rights violations in socialist and communist dictatorship countries. So right now they're suffering basically from thinking that they are superior and better. All right, so that in and of itself is racist because you're thinking that you're supremacist, that you are supreme to everyone else. Yeah, that does go way back to Nazism, doesn't it? Meanwhile, in Britain, Anti-Fascist Action, AFA, a militant anti-fascist group founded in 1985, gave birth to the Antifa movement in the United States. In Germany, the AABO was founded in 1992 to combine the efforts of smaller Antifa groups scattered around the country. In Sweden, AFA, or Militant Antifa Group, founded in 1993, established a 3-decade track record for using extreme violence against its opponents. In France, the Antifa group is known for its fierce opposition for the state of Israel. After the fall of the Berlin Wall in 1989 and the collapse of communism in 1990, the Antifa movement opened a new front against neoliberal organizations. Attack, established in France in 1989 to promote a global tax on financial transactions, now leads the so-called alter globalization movement, which, like the global justice movement, is opposed to capitalism. In 1999, Attack was present in Seattle during violent demonstrations that led to the failure of the WTO negotiations. Attack also participated in anti-capitalist demonstrations against the G7, the G20, the WTO, and the war in Iraq. Today, the association is active in 40 countries with more than 1,000 local groups and hundreds of organizations supporting the network. Attack's decentralized and non-hierarchical organizational structure appears to be the model being used by Antifa. You see how it's a play on words to say they don't have no centralized thing, but they do. They just have it built in a different way, but it's still the same thing. You can't be this well funded and structured without having some type of a structure. Even if it's not a hierarchical one, it's still a structure. Even if it's decentralized, it's still a structure. Communication is still going about. In February 2016, the International Committee of the Fourth International advanced the political foundations of the global anti-war movement, which, like Antifa, blames capitalism and neoliberal globalism for the existence of military conflict. All right. The new anti-war movement must be anti-capitalistic and socialistic, since there can be no serious struggle against war except in the fight to end the dictatorship of finance, capital, and the economic system that is the fundamental cause of militarism and war. Now, in July 2017, more than 100,000 anti-globalization and Antifa protesters converged on the German city of Hamburg to protest the G20 summit. Leftist mobs laid waste to the city center. An Antifa group called the G20 Welcome to Hell bragged about how it was able to mobilize Antifa groups from across the world. Quote, the summit mobilizations have been precious moments of meeting and cooperation of left-wing and anti-capitalist groups and networks from all over Europe and the world wide. We have been sharing experiences and fighting together, attending international meetings, being attacked by cops supported by the military, reorganizing our forces, and fighting back. Anti-globalization movement has changed, but our networks endure. We're active locally in our regions, cities, villages, and forests, but we're also fighting transnationally, end quote. Germany's Domestic Security Service is an annual report, and they added, quote, left-wing extremist structures tried to shift the public debate about the violence G20 summit protests in their favor, with the distribution of photos and reports of allegedly disproportionate police measures during the summit protests. They promoted an image of a state that denounced legitimate protests and put them down with police violence. Against such a state, they said, militant resistance is not only legitimate, but also necessary. Did y'all get that? And they're not just being tolerated and even supported in Germany. Oh, no, no, no. They're also being tolerated and supported here in the United States as well. And that's something people need to get. You need to get it, folks. You really need to get it. This is not a joke. This is facts being spit at you this morning. Now, we will continue the rest of this tomorrow. This is just part one. All right. Now, how did we get here? All right. You need to understand how we got here. I'll tell you how we got here. It's because certain people groups are not really in power. What do I mean? Okay, so notice how all of these rebellious groups have one thing in common, and that is they hate capitalism and they hate the Judeo-Christian faith. All right? They agree on that. Why do you equate capitalism with the Judeo-Christian faith? Many reasons. But the main reason is because the capitalistic system is the best system to give the average person an opportunity to become better. Meaning that you can start off in life poor under a capitalist system and end up at the end of your life wealthy. Under every other system, that is not possible. That is not possible under a socialist or communist structure. It is impossible. All right? The only way that a person can better themselves and make more money and be financially independent is through a capitalistic structure. You cannot achieve financial independence in a socialistic or communistic structure. It is impossible. It is not even designed for that to happen. Okay? That's why they hate capitalism. That's why they hate the Judeo-Christian faith. Now, unfortunately, what is represented today as the Judeo-Christian faith is not the real Judeo-Christian faith. It is only in word, because it is how they propagate their power structure worldwide. It is not lost on anyone that the success of the Roman Catholic Church was predicated on that. You bring in your so-called missionaries to so-called bring the gospel to the natives, but that's not really what's happening. What's happening is you're opening the door to bring the commerce in. So basically what it looked like was you had the priest followed by the businessman in the briefcase. That's what this was really all about. They found a way to use, the Roman Catholic Church found a way to use the Judeo-Christian faith to push forward their agenda. So what you see represented on TV, like TBN, channels like TBN, the Trinity Broadcast Network, you see false Judeo-Christianity represented on that channel and many other channels. All right? Preachers of LA and all that other stuff. All right? So because, and we call that the visible church. So the visible church is in the media and in the forefront. And when you think of the Judeo-Christian faith, you think about either Roman Catholicism or you think about the visible church, which is not the church. That is not the biblical Christianity. That's not what you're seeing put before you. The majority of people have never even heard the gospel. They think they've heard the gospel, but they have not. The majority of the churches in the United States are fake and false. False pastors, false people, false prophets, false teachers with false doctrine. But they have all the money and they have all the power. Okay? So again, the Vatican has all the money and all the power, along with the fake evangelical church, the fake visible evangelical church. The invisible church is the one that is not in power and has no platform. All right? and is hated by the visible church. All right? The Vatican and the fake representation of Christianity in the United States, they hate biblical Christianity. They hate it. All right? They hate it. Biblical Judaism is the same as biblical Christianity, because a real Jew who knows the scriptures is also, quote unquote, a Christian. A real Jew is born again and accepts Christ as their personal Lord and Savior. But you're not told that. You're told, oh no, Jews don't believe. No, then they're not real Jews. Jesus said it himself. Remember, he rebuked the Sanhedrin and the Pharisees up and down. He said, if you claim to be teachers of the law, how you don't know the law? If you knew the scriptures, you would know that they speak about me. That's what he said to them. Okay? So in the early church, in the book of Acts, you have the Jewish Christians, the Jews who became Christians because they saw the fulfillment of their scriptures in Jesus Christ, who is God in the flesh. All right? Even those at the time who did not want to believe had no choice when they saw the works that he did done in front of them. They knew they couldn't raise the dead and heal the sick. Only God could do things like that. They couldn't give sight to the blind. Only God could do that. All right. So that's why this is so important, ladies and gentlemen. Like I told you in the beginning, all of this comes back round to the markets. The markets that we trade are a representation of the capitalistic system. But what has happened is because corruption has been allowed to run rampant within Western society, it's making the capitalistic system look bad. You see what I'm saying? But if you really think about it and break it down, blaming capitalism for the greed and for the corruption of some does not destroy the system as being valid, no more than you would blame a car that crashed into another. You don't blame the car, you blame the driver. The only time you blame the car is if the car was malfunctioning at the time of the accident. But if the car was not malfunctioning during the time of the accident, you blame the driver, not the car. So because some people are corrupt and greedy within the capitalistic system, you don't bring down the whole capitalistic system because of the greed and corruption of some. What you do is you clamp down and you clean house, and you don't allow it to flourish in the first place. All right? And that's what people don't understand. No, Thunderbird, capitalism is not premised on corruption. I think you need to read Tom Sowell's book on economics, basic economics, and you will see that basic economics explains to you what that is. It's not corrupt at all. It's not. Like I said, you have people corrupting capitalism. You got the dude in the bank who is corrupt, who is corrupting capitalism. Fractional reserve banking is not capitalism. That's banking. See what I'm saying? That's not the same thing. You have a watermelon. I have fried chicken. You want some of my fried chicken. I want some of your watermelon. We do a trade. Boom. That is an economy. We just created an economy. We both traded for something that we saw more valuable than the other. I like how Thomas Sowell broke it down in its smallest minute detail, which is this. We're talking about rare or scarce resources that have alternative uses. That's what this breaks down. That's what this is about, folks. Scarce resources with alternative uses. All right? You need to understand that. Yeah, I'm familiar with John Perkins' Confessions of an Economic Hitman, but again, what is that? That is corruption being allowed to prosper within the capitalistic structure. Again, dragging things out to the logical conclusion, you can make the same argument for just about anything. Once again, it's not the system that is the problem, it is the fraud, it is the corruption that is being allowed to run rampant within the system. You have the governmental powers that be corrupting the system. That is the problem. You see where I'm going with this? People in power tend to want to stay in power, and they're willing to do anything and everything to make that happen. All right, like I said, people who don't understand capitalism is because they haven't read Basic Economics by Tom Sowell. Read it. Read Basic Economics by Tom Sowell. That book explains to you what it is and how it's supposed to operate. Everything else is corruption. Corruption has been allowed to seep in to every area of our society. And this is the problem. This is the end result of this, ladies and gentlemen. All right, this is what it is. All right. So you got to have rule of law, and you can't just, use the law arbitrarily, and you can't allow other people to be exempt from the law. That too is corruption. All right. Straight up. It's corruption, ladies and gentlemen. That's the real problem. All right. People abuse things. They abuse the system. That's corruption. That's all I'm saying. Now, unfortunately, anything run and done by man is going to be corrupt anyway, because man is corrupt. We already know this. Man is corrupt at his core. That's why you're seeing all the problems that you are seeing. It is because of sin. Racism is sin. Corruption and fraud is sin. Rioting is sin. Causing damage to people and their property is sinful. Destroying businesses, rioting, being rebellious is sinful. And that's what the real core of the problem is. And it's a lack of real dialogue too, because the mainstream media is an extension of the federal government. It does not allow for debate and discussion to truly happen. There's no marketplace of ideas really taking place. It's the government giving you the narrative that it wants you to have. And everything else is silenced outside of that. That's where our problem is. All right, so I just wanted to really touch on this today. I hope that you guys got something out of this. We will finish this tomorrow. We'll do part 2 tomorrow. But I think it's really important for people to know what's going on, because all of this affects us, no matter where you are, in what walk of life, economic standing. This is really messed up. Now, you're right. The media is controlled by corporations, but the corporations are also part of the government. You know what I'm saying? It's like, again, it's that circle, man. It won't end. You know what I'm saying? It won't end. And that is a powerful James Madison quote too, Thunderbird. I agree with you 100% on that. That was right on time. Right on time, man. So it is, man. It is what it is. So it's sad, man. It's really sad where we are. And I don't think this is going to end well. Not at all, man. Not at all. It's not going to end well, because I think the people's minds have been so twisted because the government controls the media. They're controlling what you hear and how you hear what you hear. How can you get truth in that? It's crazy. Anyway, I love you guys, man. Please be encouraged. And you know what it is, PulseWaveTrading.com. Remember, Smash that like button and come break bread with us. Remember, bulls make money, bears make money, and pigs get slaughtered. So remember to take what you can and give nothing back. I'll see you guys tonight with the end of day report. And I'm out. Peace.